Elisha came to Damascus. Now the king of Syria, Ben-Hadad, was sick, and it was reported to him, the man of God has come here. So the king said to his right-hand man, Hazael, take a gift in your hands, go meet that man of God and inquire of his God, Jehovah, asking, will I recover from this illness? So Hazael went to meet Elisha and took the gift in his hand, every kind of good thing that Damascus possessed, 40 camel loads, in fact. And he stood before Elisha and he said, your son Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, has sent me to you with this question, will I recover from this sickness? Elisha said to him, go, say to him, you shall recover from your illness. But Jehovah has shown me that nonetheless he will die. And then Elisha stared at Hazael. And Hazael got red-faced, self-conscious, and ashamed. And then Elisha started to cry. Hazael said, why are you weeping, my lord? And Elisha answered, I know the evil that you're going to do to the sons of Israel, to their strongholds, which you will set on fire, the young men who you will kill with the sword, the children who you will dash to pieces, the women with child that you will tear apart. Hazael said, who am I, your servant, just a dog, that I should do such a great thing? And Elisha answered, Jehovah has shown me that you will become king over Syria. Hazael then departed from Elisha, returned to his master, and reported quietly to him. Elisha said, you will recover from your illness. However, in the morning, Hazael took some of the bed clothing, soaked it in water, spread it on the king's face, and murdered him. And that's how Hazael became king in Syria. The reason that Elisha is in Damascus is because, remember, we talked about this last week, how the king of Syria had been frustrated by Elisha's capacity to know what was going to happen and thereby give tactical and strategic warning to the king of Israel. So he sent in a crack troop. The elite forces, the ones who could move in quickly, where they were going to exfiltrate Elisha to Samaria. From Samaria into Damascus, and instead Elisha ends up capturing them, and then the king of Israel wants to kill the prisoners, and Elisha instead requires that they become treated as honored guests, and they eat at the table of the king. And now, because they've shared hospitality with the king of Israel, they really can't take up arms against the king of Israel, and vice versa. There's now a connection between them. And so this actually forges a peace, and the peace lasts as long as Ben-Hadad is alive. And that's why Elisha's in Damascus, because it's now safe for him to go to Syria. And he's in Damascus, and when word reaches the king, who's sick and is worried he's going to die from the illness, and he sends his right-hand man, Hazael, he says, okay, find out. So what a great moment this is. The king wants to know, will he recover from the illness? And the answer is yes, he will recover from his illness. But, and I love that, Elisha stares at Hazael. And at first Hazael's thinking, do I have something in my teeth? But then he realizes this is something more, and that we get this thing about, like, embarrassed almost. Hazael he gets self-conscious and embarrassed, and he's like, well, what? And he begins to realize that Elisha's seeing more than he wants Elisha to see. And Elisha starts to weep. Why? Why are you weeping? Because I know what you're going to do. And I know the harm that you're going to cause to Israel. So it had been revealed to Elisha that the assassination that was about to happen. And the result of that assassination would be renewed conflict between Syria and Israel. And by the way, Hazael is, you hear Hazael saying, who am I but a dog that I should do such a great thing? Notice how he thinks about, you will set the cities afire and you will kill everybody. And he's going, that's a great thing, yeah. Because that's how kings thought back then. And we actually have, there's some archaeological material. They found what's called a stele, which is basically you put up a monument where you talk about some great victory or something. And a bunch of kings had worked together and there had been a war. And they mentioned Hazael and they describe him as the son of a nobody. He's the son of a nobody. So this is a real guy. This is not made up history. I mean, this is a real guy. And whatever any scholar might say about how much of the story itself might have been composed for the sake of the prophetic lesson or whatever, these are real individuals who lived historically, and there's no reason to think that this isn't a relatively accurate account of the events. Now, here's what I find troubling. Have you ever asked the question, gosh, if you could go back in time and kill Hitler, would you do it? Right? Well, imagine if beforehand you knew ahead of time what Hitler would do. What would you do? Yeah. What would you do? If you could see the future and you knew the harm that someone was going to cause, would you stop them? Well, here the prophet Elisha knows exactly what's coming, and he doesn't do anything. And he's standing there in his role as God's representative. So in this sense, his presence reflects what God is doing as well. Because that's part of what the prophets do, is they sort of represent what God is up to the world. And he's weeping, but he's not stopping Hazael. He doesn't do anything to stop him. He doesn't say to somebody, better let everyone know that Hazael is going to assassinate the king. He doesn't do anything but weep. And so that raises for us the huge theological question. It's that ongoing question of suffering. Why does God allow suffering? Why does God allow people to get cancer? Why does God allow floods to happen and tornadoes and hurricanes? And, you can go down the list. But it's one thing with natural disasters, but there's a different, maybe more potent question. Why doesn't God stop guys like Hazael and Hitler and just your average murderer down the street? Why doesn't God intervene directly? God knows what they're going to do. Why doesn't God do something? And that's a really important question. That's a struggle question for us. There's a joke, a kind of preacher's joke that goes, all preachers have only one sermon. Good preachers make it sound like there's more than one. That's not exactly true, but it's kind of true. Because when I've been in a church for a long time, I begin to notice how things keep rolling back around. I hear myself coming back to the same theological insights again and again. And it's not because, I just wanted to preach that. It's because when I come along and here I'm looking at this text, and this text presents the theological problem. This text presents the theological problem which the Scripture as a whole answers. I find myself saying again what I've said before. Because here's the first thing we see. We see that in the midst of this knowledge of what's coming and the choice that Hazael has, because he's got free will. He gets to choose what he's going to do. In that moment of knowing that choice is going to be used for harm, what do we see? We see God weeping. But God does not just stand by the sidelines and weep. I wish I could do something. And God does not interfere with someone's free will, which sometimes we would like God to do, but God does not do that. Because free will is authority. God has given us authority to choose how we live our lives. And when you give someone authority, then they act with that authority. And you can't, if you're like taking it away every time they do something that you don't like, then you haven't given them authority. Okay, do you understand that? Free will is an authority. We have the authority to choose to do good or ill, to bless or to curse, to cause benefit or harm. That's our choice. If God gave us free will and every time we went to curse or every time we went to cause harm, God intervened, then we don't have authority. God gave us that authority, but God does not step back and say, well, it's not my fault. I gave him free will. What God instead chooses to do is enter into the midst of it, to become part of it, and to become ultimately the victim of it. So God becomes present in human history, specifically in the life of Jesus, but in this way present in all of human history, really present. And on the cross, Jesus literally takes every single hurt and crime and punishment and hit and every evil done to any human being, as long as there have been human beings, as long as there will be human beings, all on the cross, so that Jesus becomes one who it suffers too. You understand that Jesus becomes fellow sufferer. God takes that. That's how God retains and keeps responsibility while still allowing us our authority to make choices. God becomes victim. And so God weeps for what we're going to do and what's going to be done for us. But then God takes all of that on a cross so that that's not the end of the story, so that tears can give way to laughter and joy. Because on the other side of the cross is an empty tomb. And that means that in that cross and in that empty tomb, God has brought about redemption, the capacity for us to be rescued from, redeemed from, healed from, and transformed through all of the terrible things we do and all of the terrible things done to us. And in every religion tries to confront the question of suffering. I'm a Christian because this is the answer that when I hear it speaks loud and clear. This is what love looks like. This is what truth looks like. This is what makes sense. This is the honest approach. I mean, this is the most honest solution I have ever seen in any religion to the question of strife and struggle and pain and hurt. This one, the one where God says, I give you authority, but then on that cross, I take full responsibility. That to me keeps me in this faith. And that's the thing that when I look at the cross and I think, oh my goodness, for us, I cannot stop but be amazed, stand amazed in the presence. Can you find now the prayer of response? And let's pray that together. How often, O God, do you weep, knowing the pain I will inflict, knowing the damage I will cause, knowing the hurt I will experience, but you are not content to simply watch from afar and weep helplessly. You have chosen to weep with me. My pain has become your pain, and the hurt I inflict has been inflicted on you. Because of a manger, you are not a spectator, God, not some divine observer. You are the full participant in history, the ever-present in creation. And because of a cross and an empty tomb, you are also Redeemer, the restorer of life, the healer of harm. I stand in awe of such love, and I say yes to such a work in my life. In Jesus' name, amen.